Buenos dias. Good day to you. I'm sitting here in what is known as a common area. A common area, which is a place that takes place in a lot of developments. A lot of places where people live have a common area. And this particular one in Mexico has a palapa. That's what this is. Small hut. And it has a swimming pool. And it has another big palapa over there. And then behind me it has some kids' playground stuff. It's got a basketball court, although primitive by American standards. And over there it's got, you can just see the top of a jungle gym. It's a common area. It's a place that people have said, it's important that the public has a space that they can enter into and everybody gets to enjoy it. And so it's actually paid for by homeowners association fees that you have to pay when you live in this development. It's a common area. It's common to people. It's for the public. It's an area that also exists, by the way, in mass media. It's what we call public service media. It's an area where people should be able to access information that benefits them and is not necessarily information being provided to make money off of them. That's what public service media are all about. We have NPR in this country, National Public Radio in America, I should say, in the United States, I should say. We have PBS, or the Public Broadcasting System. We have that as well, but not too many members of the public are gathering in those spaces, right? Kids and then sort of elite audiences when they get educated and have incomes. That's who's gathering on PBS and NPR. Well, in Europe, they have had a much more robust tradition of public service media, a place where the public can access information without having companies trying to convince them that they need to watch something so that the companies can make money off of advertising dollars. And so that is my intro for today, because we are talking about yet another European Union country. We're talking about Spain today and Spanish media. And I really wanted to use it as an opportunity to get across a significant change that happened in Europe. And when I talk about Europe, I'm not including Russia here. I'm including the EU countries, roughly 22. I'm not sure if it's still 22 countries today. Britain left, but some others have entered. But I'm talking about the European Union countries when I'm talking about public service media. Because right after World War II, most European countries were so afraid of having another war devastate that country. It's a war I don't know personally, but I have kind of close contact with it since both my parents had to leave the UK after World War II, and there was really not much to survive on. Food was rationed, people's houses were being taken by the government, not the whole houses, but a room for people to live in, because nobody had a place to live. So many buildings were bombed out. My mom's house, in fact, was bombed out by Germans, and she was living for 8 or 9 years with her mother in 9 or 10 or 15 different schools that she was going to, because she was living with relatives, no place to live, no housing, destroyed by the bombs. So after World War II, Britain, along with many other countries, were very wary about the damaging effects that mass media could inflict upon a population. And they looked at what happened in World War II and the use of the media by Hitler and Mussolini to promote Nazism and fascism, and to the extent where we're actually exterminating human beings, and nobody under that way of thinking thought that, well, not nobody, but people under that way of thinking didn't think that was wrong. So that's the power, at least the potential power of mass media that European nations were seeking to avoid after World War II. So most of television and radio as it developed after World War II, because it's developing in the 50s for TV, that's when it was first invented. Well, it was invented beforehand, but it didn't catch on till the 50s. Radio was around for about 30 years by then. But most radio and TV after World War II was made public service media by governments. There was no such thing as commercial television running advertisements until the 1990s for many countries, including really modern countries like Sweden. And the public service media were licensed by the government, they were controlled by the government, they were supposedly in the public interest, making sure that no other ethnicities are disparaged. And that's what happened with Hitler's media. And so there was a tight grip on public service media, but that all changed in the 1990s when commercial broadcasters started to make the case, public service media have a monopoly. They have a monopoly. And in Britain, You could not hear pop music radio very much at all in the 1960s and 70s because the BBC at that time wasn't choosing to play it. So commercial broadcasters started to become much more important. And we're still seeing the growth of those industries in Europe, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Even though it's been some 60 years, we're still seeing a conversion from this public service, public broadcasting model that existed for the most part and dominated in Europe over to a commercial model. So now that provides as a way to talk about Spain today. You know, it's really easy to get caught up in this chapter 11, I think it's chapter 11, with so many different names of companies. And I realize you're probably saturated at this point, remembering the name of this TV channel or that radio station or this ownership group. So I'm going to try not to bog you down with that and hit on some general themes about this material for today. And I want to say that last night my wife and I were looking for something to watch on Netflix, and I took up one of the suggestions of a student in this class, and we started to watch the Spanish drama Who Killed Sarah? Who Killed Sarah? We got 2 shows into it. There's 2 seasons of it. And it's the #1 show that's being watched in Mexico on Netflix, according to Netflix. I mean, who knows if that's the case. And it's a good example of a relationship between a colonial mother country, Spain, and a former colonial conquest, Mexico, still having a relationship through the media because that program is the #1 in Mexico. And I've seen other Spanish dramas as well. I'd like to recommend 2 of them. One is called Money Heist, a really fascinating, to me anyhow, drama that centers around a professor who leads a team of people. He's called a professor. He's not a professor, but he leads a team of people to rob the Spanish Federal Reserve, and they get caught inside with a hostage situation, which was all part of the plan. That's a really fascinating drama. There's another drama that I'd like to mention that's called Locked Up. Locked Up has many of the same actors from Money Heist, and in Locked Up you've got a female prison drama. And both of those dramas that I watched really riveted my wife and I. Everybody has individual tastes. They may not rivet you. But I was struck by the way that the Spaniards can create drama in their storytelling. And I have to believe that a lot of that is influenced by the telenovela format. These long, suspenseful moments between people, situations where the music helps to build a crescendo. And they're also working in a lot of humor. So I'm somewhat aware of Spanish entertainment on television, but the rest of my knowledge about Spain is not so great. So let's cover it together, the material. So we've got, next up is the idea that the authors are saying that whereas the U.S. is a visual media industry, we most of what we take in is through the eyes. In Spain, it's more of an audio-visual industry. And the case wasn't really made in the rest of the chapter, but I at least thought it was an interesting point, that there's a lot more audio in the Spanish media. So let's talk about the categories of Spanish entertainment media covered by the chapter. We've got the free-to-air category, also known as terrestrial broadcasting. Terrestrial, that's the Earth, right? And so terrestrial broadcasting is broadcasting through the airways, through the thin air, as opposed to through a cable, through a satellite, etc. And the big companies there, we've got Antenna 3 and Telenico, and they're both competing with the government broadcaster TVE, which has a 30% market share. So that's where we start to see competition for the public service broadcasters in Spain, competition coming from upstart commercial companies, Antenna 3. Interesting, we have a name of a TV station called Antenna 3, and Telenico. Also in the mix here is a big Italian media company called Mediaset, and Mediaset actually has the biggest portion of audience viewing. They've got 7 national channels. Isn't that strange to have a foreign company owning the biggest media player in television anyhow in your country? Would we put up with that if Canada owned most of our big TV channels? No, we wouldn't. We don't even allow it by law. We make sure that the owners of TV stations in the United States are American owned. All right, so next up is the public service channels that still exist. There's RTVE. There's 5 of those channels in Spain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, we only have NPR on the radio side. We only have PBS on the US side. A lot of concentrated programming just on those 2 channels. They have to cover a lot of kids. They have to cover serious stuff. They have to cover comedies, documentaries, news. There's not much room for that in a 24-hour schedule. These public service broadcasters, however, that we're seeing in in these European countries, they have multiple TV channels that each one is geared towards a different kind of audience. Next up is pay TV. Pay TV, the primary channel that got paid television going, or subscription television as it's also called. Netflix, if you want to call it that, or HBO. Netflix is not really technically subscription TV. I should back up on that, but you do pay for it, right? But the leading company is called Canal Plus, or Canal Plus, as we might pronounce it. And Canal stands for channel, so it's like Channel Plus. And it's a French company. It's a French company, so once again, we have another company, and look at Europe. There are countries all around you. France is surrounded by 9 countries. Spain, I don't know how many, they're surrounded by 4 or 5 at least, even though they have the coast. So your neighbors are in such close proximity with all these different languages and cultures. And, I can tell you, having been a person who's backpacked through Europe many times, it's amazing. Travel for just a little bit on a train, you go from Switzerland to Germany, you're in a completely different world. Different looking people, different looking sights, different looking foods. That's Europe. That's why so many people like to go there, for so many reasons. There's so much diversity in the culture. Some diversity. There isn't diversity in other areas, but that's a whole other subject. All right, then there are these other big pay TV companies that are former cell phone companies. You may not know about them. They're big in the European theaters. So we've got Ono is a big cable TV company it was purchased by Vodafone. Vodafone was a British cell phone company, just like Verizon, just like T-Mobile. But believe it or not, in Spain, the biggest distributor in terms of technology of television content in the pay TV arena is not cable, it is not satellite, it is actually IPTV, Internet Protocol Television. They have a whole system set up in Spain. I don't know much more about it than that. I know we don't have it here in the US, but it allows for content to be distributed by the internet. And we've got another cell phone company in the mix here, and that's Movistar. Movistar is a big cell phone company which also has a cable channel. And when I'm here in Mexico and I go around, Movistar is one of the is the biggest company, I should say, that offers pay-as-you-go cell phone service. So if you don't want to pay a monthly bill, monthly subscription, you get your Movistar phone and you add credits to it. Next up is video. I'm going to point your attention on your own to this material in the chapter. This lists basically the most popular videos that are downloaded on the web by Spanish people. And the chapter makes the claim that short videos are the favorite. I don't really know what short means. 20 minutes is my guess. It's not really detailed. But there's a neat chart there that shows a list of what people are downloading. So it goes short videos is first, and then series and movies are what people are downloading second, and then family and friends. I thought that was interesting. Third most downloaded content category in Spain was families and friends. Now let's move on to film. The chapter makes the claim that theatrical film is very robust in Spain. I don't know what theatrical film is. All film is theatrical to me. But what's important to me to mention for this material is that the big players here, like we've seen in film and almost all the other countries, more than TV, more than radio, the big player is America. In fact, the top 4 distribution companies of film in Spain, they're not even Spanish. We've got Disney, we've got Universal, we've got Fox, and we've got Warner. So we're continuing to demonstrate the prowess of American media abroad, especially in terms of film and radio and TV. The chapter makes brief mention of gaming, basically mentioning that Sony's PlayStation is the most important platform. I don't know if that's the biggest platform in the United States. You would know more about that than me. And then the chapter moves on to radio, which it calls a small industry, but still a very important industry. And the leader is Prisa, P-R-S-A. It's the market leader. It has the biggest talk radio format. Thought that was interesting. Our biggest formats in the U.S. tend to be music formats, unless you live in a city. Then our biggest formats in terms of listeners, numbers of listeners, are news talk stations. Like in Philadelphia, KYW is the biggest station. But you go out into the Stroudsburgs and the Allentowns and the middle America towns and mid-sized cities, and you're going to find music. Music is the biggest genre in Spain. It looks like it's that talk genre, and the biggest one is owned by Prisa. But it's an important industry because people still listen to radio to have their opinions influenced when it comes to news and public affairs, and that's why it's still said to be a big player in terms of people's knowledge and the social action that they presumably take or decide not to take. So that's going to wrap up our information on Spain today. I certainly hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to leave you with a couple Spanish sayings. Hasta luego, que tenga buen día, y adios.